We invite all who care to join us. Recitation of Lord's Prayer, followed by a moment of silence. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
it is now 7 o'clock. Please join me. Shelby City Council is called to order. Please join me in pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Mr. Crum.
Mr. Robb.
Here.
Mr. Roberts. Here. Mr. Gates.
Here.
Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin.
I'll entertain a motion to excuse Councilman McLaughlin.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robb and a second by Mr. Martin to excuse Councilman McLaughlin. As I recall from the record, he stated last meeting he'd be out of state, not on vacation. Any discussion on this motion to excuse? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
That motion passes. Now I'll entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal from June 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Robb to dispense with the reading of the journal from June 21, 2022. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
That motion passes. Now comes the time for public comment. Anyone has a comment they'd like to make at this time, you'll actually on the podium, state your name and address, and make your comment to council. Is there any public comment that wanted to be shared from council here during this time frame? All right, hearing no public comment, we'll move forward to reports from standing and special committees. The Community and Economic Development Committee did not meet this afternoon. Public Works and General Operations Committee, Councilman Robb.
I will defer to
Councilman Robb.
Thank you. Public Works and General Operations Committee met for 5 minutes on June 28th. Discussion included the charter amendment that will be considered tonight as ordinance 14, 2022. Also, the council will consider the appointment of Bob Dean to the position of Code Enforcement Officer. And Mr. Geis also let us know that some of the lots in Wolf Run subdivision are going to be combined in an effort to make them more marketable. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Robertson regarding his report? Hearing none, we'll move forward to reports of city officials. Before we get into the motions that are on the agenda under my report, I do want to say, although we did not meet as the Economic Development Committee, most of you received the letter. I don't think it all came off copied as it should have, but a very exciting thing for the city of Shelby and Ms. Jessica Gribben. This was addressed to Ms. Gribben. So on behalf of the Economic Development Institute and the Ohio Economic Development Association, it is our pleasure to inform you that you are approved to be certified as an Ohio Certified Economic Development Professional. Your capstone paper, presentation, and scenario paper were very highly rated and evidenced your skill as an economic development professional. And they now announced here that they will be recognizing her achievement at an event to take place in Columbus, October 4th through 7th, 2022. And it says again, congratulations on being an Ohio CED Best in Class Ohio Economic Developer. So very, very pleased for Ms. Ribbon, and that's a great thing for the city of Shelby as well, to have her working, day in and day out for the benefit of the city of Shelby. So all of our combined congratulations go to Ms. Ribbon. Okay. I have no other report really other than that. I will entertain the motions that are on the agenda.
Move to request a liquor hearing for On the Rocks Tapas LLC at 44 East Main Street.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. Roberts to request a liquor hearing for On the Rocks TAPS LLC at 44 East Main Street. Discussion? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, they are requesting a D5 license. A D5 license is for spirituous liquor, beer, wine, and mixed beverages until 2:30 a.m. For reasons unknown to me, there is much less information on any number of places on the websites. Used to be you could go to liquor control and get much more information. I don't want to say that whoever they is, has made it much more difficult, but it is much more difficult. And I'm old enough to remember that a liquor license at one time had to be held by a natural person. Couldn't be held by a corporation, couldn't be held by an LLC, couldn't be held by a partnership. They've changed the law, so it's more difficult to track things down. But I did go to the Secretary of State's website, and I want to thank the clerk for printing out copies of their LLC application. There's a couple of interesting pieces of information in it. We look at the bottom, it says page 1 of 3, the purpose, which is an optional space. They say restaurant, so they wouldn't even have had to put that in, but they did put that in. So we're looking at a restaurant here. And the statutory agent is Stacy Booker on Devonshire Court. As we well know, we often find that another LLC is the statutory agent for an LLC. Again, I can remember when it had to be a natural person. So here we do have a natural person, much to my surprise. 44 East Main Street is the site of the Ivory Bean Coffee House. That's what I've learned, that's what I found out, in addition to what we have on this on this 2 pages from Liquor Control.
All right. Thank you for that information. Any further discussion? Then this is a motion to request a liquor hearing. Mr. Roberts.
Mr.
I'm
Roberts.
sorry, Mr. Crum, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Nay.
Mr. Gates?
Nay.
Mr. Martin?
Nay.
Mr. Rob?
Nay.
That motion to request a liquor hearing fails. I'll entertain a motion to request a liquor hearing for My TY Management LLC, DBA doing business as Legends Sports Grill and Pub at 63 West Main Street.
Move to request a liquor hearing for My TY Management LLC, DBA Legend Sports Bar, or Legend Sports Grill and Pub at 63 West Main Street.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Robb for that request. Discussion? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, this is a simple transfer from one owner to the other. D1 license is beer until 1 a.m., D2 is wine and mixed beverages until 1 a.m., and D3 is for spirituous liquor until 1 a.m.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Crum.
Mr. Roberts?
Nay.
Mr. Gates?
Nay.
Mr. Martin?
Nay.
Mr. Rob?
Nay.
The motion to request a liquor hearing fails. Now, I entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Miss Jeannie Covert to the position of Director of Community Health Nurse.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin to confirm the appointment of Miss Jeannie Covert to the position of Director of Community Health and Nurse. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, could you mentioned at Finance and Personnel, how many applications you got for this? There were lots, as I recall.
There were initially, and then that kind of, as things sifted out, we wound up with 2 interviews of probably, I think we had initially 5 or 7, but the 2 interviews, and as you can see, Ms. Covert comes across with a lot of wonderful qualifications. She is born and raised here in Shelby. Her maiden name is Yetzer, and so she has a heart for the city and a real desire to get on the education end of public health, trying to prevent all the things that she has treated in her career. Any further discussion, Mr. Gates?
Mayor, at the bottom of the second page, I was curious about a BLS certification. Not trying to play stump you, but basic life support.
Basic life support, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rob.
I was going
Yeah, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
That motion passes. Now I entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Mr. Bob Dean to the position of Code Enforcement Officer.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Gates to confirm the appointment of Mr. Bob Dean to the position of Code Enforcement Officer. Discussion. Mr. Roberts.
And I was ribbing Mr. Dean in the hallway earlier. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched, but I can't see another person that would be better for the job. So.
Thank you. Mr. Gates.
Well, to echo what my friend has said, around here you have to be able to count to 3. So sometimes you have to count to 4, but generally you have to count to 3. And good-naturedly, my caution to your nominee is, be careful, you might get what you ask for. So
That's what I'm afraid of.
If I might add, I think all of us in this room have the same spirit. We want to put the best foot forward in the city of Shelby, and we need some help in that department of educating our citizenry, and I think that's a big first step, and Mr. Dean has that kind of spirit about him. And then, of course, following education, if we do not have a proper follow-through, then there are enforcement tools, but the first emphasis is going to be educating to exterior property maintenance. Mr. Martin.
I know I've discussed it before, but in your conversations with Mr. Dean, did you let him know as well that council is open to feedback on rules and regulations that may just, for lack of a better term, don't make sense?
Yes.
And if there's gaps that we need to fix, we want to be in that feedback loop.
Yes, sir. We had a conversation, and thank you for that reminder.
Because that is, to me, one of the most important parts of this. Not just enforcing the law blindly per se, but also being able to say, that really doesn't, what's the intent there? Because we do have regulations and rules on the books that have been in there for years and years and years and years. And sometimes the intent gets lost or whatnot. We just need to relook at things to just make sure that it makes sense.
Agreed. Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
The motion to confirm passes. Congratulations, Mr. Dean. Now, are there any questions or comments for me in regard to my interesting sort of report here? All right, let's move forward then to Mr. Crum, Director of Finance.
Thank you, sir. I was actually on vacation for most of last week. I appreciate everybody who was able to help out in my absence. And unfortunately, our tax department was also out sick last week. So there ended up being a very poorly timed vacation on my part. But everybody got through. Special thanks to Stacy and Amber and Jennifer up front for taking care of everything while we were gone. I don't really have too much to say. I know the tax collection was very good last month. I don't have the exact number off of me, but we'll get that for our finance meeting next week. Other than that, we're just working through the audit and just our normal operations.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions in regard to that report from Mr. Crum? Mr. Eister is not with us here this evening. Mr. Crum, Mr. Eister is not with us here this evening. Mr. Joe Geis, Project Coordinator.
Thank you, Mayor. As you can tell, uptown, our streetscape project is continuing. I anticipate them being done with that phase here in the next week or two. And then they'll move downtown and get started. So we opened up bids on 6/24 for the second phase of our paving. Sarver Paving was the only bid at $312,907.48. The estimate was $313,315. So right after we put this out, gas prices went crazy, and I've got to call some other contractor that said there's just no way. And this is the same contractor that's doing the initial phase, so I think that's probably the only way we got this. They'll just do them all at the same time, do them both at the same time, and keep moving on. So for the Black Fork Commons, we are receiving submittals for it in there, and the contractor is ready to work on the arch area with our streetscape contractor at any time when that's needed. And our signal project, our contractor for that has been working real well with Kelston on the streetscape and doing their part when things were tore up, and it worked out real well. So, and they're ready to go as soon as that intersection is done. They'll put those on and traffic signals on there. So that's all I have there.
Thank you, Mr. Geis. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Geis in regard to this report? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I wonder if Mr. Geis could update council on the Stauffer property on East Main Street.
Mr. Geis.
We finally have a signed agreement. The Stauffers have signed it. The contractor who tore the house down up the street is given a price. He is supposed to be here doing it. He's like, I have to get on him to get this done because he had some, who knows, but he had some problems getting the other stuff and this and that, but it should be done very soon.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Geis. We come to new business. Any new business to be brought before council this evening? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I move that Councilman Robb be appointed Vice President pro tempore for this evening.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin. And Councilman Robb be appointed as pro tem councilman. You said Vice President Council this evening.
Yes.
Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts,
Yeah.
Mr. Gates,
Yeah.
Mr. Martin,
Yay.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
That motion passes. Thank you. Write this down. Yes, Mr. Martin.
I reached out to Mr. Insman today on this, but just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as getting rid of the debris that is stacked up where we're supposed to be able to have a parade, and it looks awful. So, because it's been there for, I don't know, 2 weeks. And I don't know the terms of the contract or whatever, but if we can just make sure that we get on them. I know that Mr. Insman let me know that they were supposed to be on the boulevard today. That did not happen. Nothing's been moved on the boulevard at all. And so, you know, Bicycle Days is always our opportunity to put our best foot forward. And when it comes to even coming in on Main Street, and there's, you know, twigs and everything that's been there. And it's, you know, it's not the fault of the homeowners. As we said, hey, put it out to the street and we'll come get it. And dare I say, there are probably a lot of homeowners took advantage of that to say, well, I will trim my trees that I have been waiting on. So I, you know, get that debris cleared out and put it up. And so it is quite the eyesore in a lot of areas of our city. I haven't been everywhere, but it seems that everywhere I go in the city, there's debris by the streets that hasn't been picked up yet. So,
You can make a comment, Michelle, maybe up these, or did it?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've been in contact with Randy Overlander, the Overlander Tree Service, just about every day. They finished cleaning the debris pile at the collection site today. This afternoon, they were in the presence of the Grand Boulevard late this afternoon. I drove there about 4:15 and they were at the eastern end of Grand Boulevard. So their priority is the Grand Boulevard. They're going to work through the parade route from the Grand Boulevard, Wilson, and Wentz. Continue on, of course, on Main Street. They're going to go out Gamble, containing South Gamble as well. So we've been in contact with them. So the other item that's important to clear would be 47 South Gamble. That's the residency that has the 2 trees that's leaning on in front of their house. So that's going to clear it out as well. So they will be using their grapple truck tomorrow to secure that tree so they can get it kind of removed from that premise. So, yeah. But the drop site is clean. Our service crews will have to make a trip down that way to do some final cleaning on it.
Mr. Martin?
and if we have time, I understand priorities being the blur when we're short on time, I get that. But if we have the ability to also get Main Street coming in on 39,
Mansfield Avenue.
Mansfield Avenue, yes. That would be,
Obviously.
that, yeah, if possible, just, again, we're trying to put our best foot forward,
Yeah, I'm with you.
being what it is. So.
Mr. Brown?
Just to add a comment to that, I noticed that there are several locations in town where the contractor's gone through earlier and residents hadn't yet brought their brush to the curb, and now we have big piles of it. Is there any intention for them to go back through and get those?
They're working on the south side of Main Street now. So once they've cleared that, they will make another clean sweep through.
The question, are they gonna go back through and check again? Because one particular case, they were working right around the corner from this big pile of brush and went right on by it, so.
Yes, I'll be in contact with the overlanders. I'll go back through to make sure the city's picking up.
This, Mr. Gates?
Mayor, I happened down Grand Boulevard about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I can confirm that Overlander was out. They were just east of Lickety Avenue.
Good. This, I think everyone in this room knows the full intent of trying to get our city cleaned up, and but I would think it's one of those deals where it's easier said than done. You know, it's just a process, and the resources that Overlanders has, they cannot bring all their resources just to Shelby. They're serving several communities, so we're working with them what we have, and there was, I think there was, I don't know what forecast was out there, but there was supposedly going to be raining here today, so I think there may be some decision made early on that maybe they changed their minds on. So understood. My frustration is your frustration, but you know, step by step we'll get it. But I agree with Mr. Martin. We're going to have guests in town here, so we're going to try to make it look the best we can, especially from that gateway coming into the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Martin. Any further new business? All right, move to unfinished business. There's really nothing new to report on the former ice plant property, but hopefully we'll have some news to share in the weeks to come. Any other unfinished business? Well, let's go into legislation.
Amended ordinance number 8, 2022. amending chapter 1486, stormwater management, section 1486.16, maintenance of stormwater drainage facilities and control structures of the codified ordinances of the city of Shelby, Ohio.
Move for third reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robb and a second by Mr. Roberts for the third reading of amended ordinance number 8, 2022. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Amended ordinance number 8, 2022 passes its third reading.
Move the ordinance be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts for the passage of amended ordinance number 8, 2022. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Amended ordinance number 8, 2022 passes.
Ordinance number 13, 2022, vacating an alley that runs perpendicular of East Main Street between lots 565, 567, and 85 within the city of Shelby, Richland County, Ohio.
Move for second reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for the second reading of ordinance number 13, 2022. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Ordinance number 13, 2022 passes the second reading.
Ordinance number 14, 2022, proposing an amendment of section 46 of the charter of the city of Shelby and submitting such proposed amendment to the electors.
Move for first reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts for the first reading of ordinance number 14, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, amendments to the city charter are few and far between. And I didn't do an exact count, but I'm safe to say that the U.S. Constitution has been amended more times than our city charter has, in the for what it's worth department. What this amendment would do, and if we can look at section 1, there's a provision that is stricken through. Right now, the charter says that no contract shall be let which exceeds the estimate for the improvement contemplated. What had happened was that, of course, the Blackport Commons Plaza, we ended up bidding that 3 times. The second time that we bid that, we had a bid that if we hadn't had this provision in our city charter and we were following the Ohio Revised Code, we would have been able to award a contract. And those tab sheets are attached, and we can see the estimate was $1.7 million. 2K General, their bid was $1,768,000. So although it's over the estimate, if we go to the estimate and add 10%, that would come to $1.875 million. So we could have awarded a contract at that point. So what the charter did was to cost us in time. And you know, there's that old chestnut that time is money. So most subdivisions in the state of Ohio rely on its Ohio Revised Code section 153.12 on the awarding and executing of contracts. This is a provision, although it's in Title I, which applies to state law, this provision applies to the state, any county, township, municipal corporation, school district, or other political subdivision, so on and so on. And the pertinent section here in that law, no contract to which this section applies shall be entered into if the price of the contract is in excess of 10% of the above entire estimate thereof. So that's where the 10% rule is found in this section dealing with state law, or the state of Ohio, but applying to all subdivisions. So that's the rule under which the county works, Sharon and Jackson Township, the school district. It's interesting to note that our charter was, going to use a kind word, was appropriated from the city of Ashland. The people who wrote our charter didn't really write our charter. They went and got a copy of Ashland's charter and crossed out Ashland and wrote in Shelby in the appropriate places. That charter, that's where this language comes from. Well, Ashland at some point subsequently amended their charter to take that out. So there's plenty of examples around where the 10% rule does apply. I'm a charterite, without a doubt. I'm very cautious about amending the charter, but here's a case where it seems to make sense.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Martin?
I just have one comment. It's really just procedural, really, in nature. I do feel that the process for a charter amendment coming before council is an important one, but I do feel that as a procedure, council should have more of an administrative role in that. In other words, making sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, not necessarily functioning to the substantive issues of it. So I don't know exactly, I'll put it this way, I am not necessarily in favor of this. However, I feel administratively it's well within our bounds to take it to the electors, and then I can make a decision in the ballot box like everyone else of the electors in the city of Shelby. Unless it were absolutely egregious to the charter, I can't see a situation where as a council member, I would vote against taking a charter amendment to the electors. So I say all that to say, while I'm not a big fan of this change, even though in this particular case it did cost us some time, you know, at the end of the day, we actually got a lower bid. But that said, I don't feel it's my place as a council member to exercise essentially fiat over the wills of the electors. And so, you know, Mr. Gates did a great job on the administrative side on this. I can see no ill on that, and therefore I will vote to present this to the electors.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Gates?
Just not specific to this issue, but the adopting a charter and then any subsequent amendments to that charter shows that ultimate authority rests not with you, Mayor, not with us as council members, but with the electorate in this community.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Ordinance number 14, 2022 passes its first reading.
Resolution number 41, 2022, recognizing Marvin Memorial Library on the occasion of its 125th anniversary.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts for the passage of resolution 41, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, would the clerk read the resolution, please?
Resolution number 41, 2022. Sponsors, council members Gates and Rob. Recognizing Marvin Memorial Library on the occasion of its 125th anniversary. Whereas Marvin Memorial Library began as a reading room on June 4th, 1897 in a small rented room in the Sutter Higgins block on East Main Street with a collection of 300 books and Miss Carrie Marvin as the first librarian. And whereas over the many decades since its humble start, said library has evolved into a modern institution whose mission is to offer high-quality, relevant, and innovative programs and services that strengthen the community and enrich the lives of all who live here. And whereas council desires to recognize the trustees, staff, patrons, and greater Shelby community as together we celebrate the 125th anniversary of said library's founding. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Shelby, Ohio, a majority elected thereto concurring. Section 1, the Marvin Memorial Library shall be and is hereby recognized on the occasion of the 125th anniversary of its founding. Section 2, that the Clerk of Council present Marvin Memorial Library an authenticated copy of this resolution. Section 3, that the Clerk of Council cause this resolution to be published once in a newspaper of general circulation published within the city limits. Section 4, that all meetings and hearings concerning the adoption of this resolution have been in compliance with codified ordinance 220.01, Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22, and the Charter of the City of Shelby. Section 5, that this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval by the mayor, and the earliest period allowed by law.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay?
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Resolution number 41, 2022 passes. Comes a time for miscellaneous business. Is there any miscellaneous business to be brought before council this evening? Mr. Martin.
I would just like to wish Mr. Gates well on his well-deserved and earned vacation over the next few weeks.
As do we all.
I shall endeavor to do my best.
Sure, Pat will see you to that. Any other miscellaneous business? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, the council adjourns.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for adjournment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay?
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
That motion passes. Council adjourns at 7:35.